Welcome to tonight's Dharma talk. Tonight I'd like to give a talk about impermanence, dispassion, cessation and letting go, which are the last tetrad of the 16 steps of mindfulness breathing. And this last tetrad is all about insight. As I've been giving talks over the last 4 periods or 4 sessions here, been talking about these 16 steps as a combination of a co-joining of serenity and insight approaches for awakening. And they both have enormous benefits. However, we need insight to wake up. And there's many ways of understanding what insight is, but one way I could describe it is as seeing the way things actually are, having a perception of the reality of life and death, seeing the 3 universal characteristics of existence: anicca, dukkha, anatta, or impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. And we could call not self here emptiness, in that it means similar things, slightly different, but basically the meaning the same thing. So impermanence, well, it means that everything changes. Conditioned phenomena change. We don't have to look far to see this. We can see it right now, where people are moving. I'm talking. Conditions arising and passing away. Conditions arising and passing away. Conditions arising and passing away. And because conditions arise and pass away, they cannot bring enduring happiness, because the conditions for happiness arises, but then it changes, and so the happiness changes. The enduring happiness can't be found in conditioned phenomena. So it's dukkha, it's of a dukkha nature. And because everything's changing, there's a sense of interdependence. There's no interdependence, sorry. There's no one thing in all this. There's these changing conditions, and conditions arising because of causes and conditions, and that leads on to other conditions which give rise to other causes and conditions, and so on and so forth. So there's what we have is these streams of dependently arising processes interacting, which refers to it refers to dependent arising, actually, the principle behind how the Buddha explained things come to be, and also how they cease. And I've mentioned dependent arising, I think probably every time I've given a talk here, but essentially dependent arising is quite a complex principle, quite a complex reality, but it's described succinctly in the suttas like this: when this arises, that arises. Sorry, when this is, that is. With the arising of this, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. When this does not arise, that does not arise. When this ceases, that ceases. In other words, there's a kind of interdependence. There's a causes and conditions for the arising of suffering, and also there's causes and conditions for the arising of freedom. And this condition, dependent arising, is demonstrated in the 4 Noble Truths. There is dukkha, there is a cause of dukkha. It begins with craving, or begins with ignorance, or it doesn't actually begin anywhere. It's just there's this. The Buddha talked about it as craving is the source of suffering here, the cause of suffering, and it is this kind of dependent origination. There's this. It's a major link in a whole wheel of dependent arising. And so, and the cause of freedom is, of course, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, the Eightfold Path, wisdom, ethics giving the foundation for meditation and mental development, and then mental development. So, when we talk about insight, we're seeing the reality of things rather than seeing the elusive nature of things. We kind of create stories about ourselves and life, whereas in fact there is just this. There is just dependent arising, and these conditions are impermanence, not self, and unsatisfactoriness in conditioned phenomena. So when we're coming to this last tetrad of the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing, we've practiced all the other practices. We've practiced all the preceding, how many are there? 13 steps? 12 steps. Yeah, we've gone through, and we just invited you to practice those 12 steps. And that is accumulation of the 7 factors of awakening, as well as all these processes involved with serenity and insight. And the mind is primed. The mind is ready to start to see deeply into experience, deeply into the way things actually are, which is, they are not self. They are empty of things. And so, and they are impermanent. So we're focusing on one of those characteristics here. And these characteristics, if you can perceive one, then you naturally perceive the other. Like in the seeing of impermanence, it naturally generalizes to the other conditions of experience, the other characteristics of experience. This, like when you see the impermanence of something, you also naturally see it's not self-nature, and also you can naturally see how it has a dukkha nature about it. The other thing about these 3 characteristics is that they generalize to other things, other experiences as well. So not only, if you saw, for example, the impermanence of a falling leaf, I use that as a classic example, that can generalize to the impermanence, to seeing the impermanence of a really destructive thought pattern or a really painful emotion. Seeing the impermanence in one thing generalizes to seeing impermanence in the other thing, another thing, or another stream, I should say, and that also generalizes to seeing the other characteristics. So what we're doing here is we're with the 13th step of mindfulness of breathing, you're invited to contemplate impermanence. So we're contemplating impermanence. Usually when you talk to New Wave people, sometimes they say, oh, brand new day. I mean, when you contemplate impermanence, you think about, not too long before something wonderful happens. Like I'm going to Thailand next week, and I can't help but be in some ways kind of anticipating the joy of going to Thailand. I'm looking forward to that change. So we usually look forward to the brand new day, the next experience, the next taste sensation, whatever it is, we look forward to it. And what we don't attend to is that it's falling away, like it's change, the way it falls away. I've been playing with this because I'm preparing to go to Thailand, and I'm thinking about, how will it be when I'm landing back in Australia? How will that be at the end of my journey? I'm kind of excited about going, but what's going to happen? It's all going to end. It's going to end in some stage or other. So what we do when we contemplate impermanence in this particular step, we're starting to perceive the fading, the disappearance of experience, the fading away of experiences, and this gives us a sort of a disenchantment. Seeing a kind of a fading away of our habits of craving after the senses, craving after to be somebody, craving after to not be somebody. It fades away our cravings for something pleasant, and it also fades away our cravings to push away things that are unpleasant. So we have this fading away of craving. And that's the 14th step. It's called virago, and different translations for it. I think fading away is a great way of understanding it. but it's also called dispassion. Dispassion in the sense that we're not grasping after something, we're not trying to get something or trying to push something away. It calms that down. It starts to free us from that bind of craving after things. And so that's the 14th step. And so when we have a fading away of the craving, and I was mentioning this earlier in our meditation, but when there's a fading away of the craving, it's not like we're not feeding into getting more. Like we see an experience coming up, it might be an experience of a sound or a smell or a taste or a new relationship or whatever it is, we see this experience coming up and we don't kind of feed into having more of it. We're not feeding into it with our cravings. So when it changes, it naturally changes and stops. Without us, and when we're not grasping after more, we're not feeding into this process of trying to maintain the impermanence or the next sensation or next experience, it comes to an end. We allow things to naturally come to an end. And this brings us up to that step which is the 15th step of cessation. Now there's many ways we can understand cessation. There's a couple of ways it's described in Buddhist psychology or Buddhism. And one way of understanding cessation is as something called nirodha. And this is a kind of a ceasing of mental and physical phenomena, a ceasing of consciousness. I mean, it's not something that I can't say that I'm very familiar with this, but I've heard from other people, other practitioners, that it's a stopping. And I've heard one practitioner describe it as a lights out moment. Other people have described it as like a suspended animation. And I've heard of this, there's some practitioners that are very deep practitioners, they can suspend their functioning in their consciousness. It's like a lights out moment. More than a moment sometimes. Sometimes people go on for a long time. But anyway, that's one meaning of it. But there's another meaning to it. And this one I prefer to hold on to because it feels more achievable. And that meaning is the cessation of craving, or the cessation of grasping, or the cessation of becoming, the cessation of birth, the cessation of ignorance, the cessation of six sense fears, the cessation of ignorance, the cessation of mental creations, the cessation of consciousness, the cessation of six sense fears, which sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and mind, cessation of contact, cessation of feelings, and feelings usually lead to cravings when we're caught up in the wheel of samsara, and then the cessation of craving again. So it's a cessation. And with the cessation, that leads to the final step. Actually, cessation precedes full awakening. It precedes awakening at the various stages, actually. There's an experience of cessation of something. And that leads to our last step, which is letting go. And here, I can't remember the Pali word, but I think it translates as letting go. So we have this experience of just completely letting it go. One time I heard Venerable Sumedho give a talk where he summarised the Eightfold Path into 2 words. He said it's letting go. That's the summary of the Eightfold Path, letting go. And when you think at craving, grasping, clinging, are pretty strong features in this dependent arising that gives rise to our suffering. It's a pretty powerful way of keeping us in samsara. There's a natural understanding that, well, if we can let go of whatever we're grasping after, whatever we're holding on to, whatever we're clinging to, this sense of me, mine and myself, and clinging to this kind of a delusional way of seeing things, Not that it's not that it's not functional. I mean, we function as humans in the world. And there's a reality, however. There's a reality of nibbana. There is the reality of non-clinging. So when we can let go of the causes of us being in samsara, being deluded by the way we think things are in samsara, by the illusions of things, we can experience the reality of non-clinging, which is the way Venerable Lungpa Po Cha would has described nibbana, freedom. And nibbana cannot be really described. It's kind of outside the realms of concepts. It's not conceptual. And it is free from the mental distortions that blind our seeing clearly. Like it's nibbana is like pulling aside the veils of these mental distortions so that we can see clearly the way things actually are. And I'm going to quote the Buddha here about what he said about nibbana. The Buddha described nibbana as profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful and sublime, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. I think it's like nibbana's already here, but we just can't see it. We're looking at it, but we just can't see it. And in my opinion, or my thoughts about this, it's like, you remember those old stereograms, or no, it wasn't even a stereogram, it was just this bunch of dots. And if you change your focus on these bunch of dots, sometimes you'd see these images, the 3D images arising. I don't know if you can remember that. I think that was around in the 80s or the 90s or something like that. And you get these books with these pictures that you just look at and you go, I can't see anything. But then you just change your perspective or you change your focus and it all comes out. It's like that. It's like we can see it right now, but we just don't realise it, if that makes sense. And so to be, how do you say it? Profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful and sublime, unattainable by mere reasoning. You're not going to think your way through it. One is unable to use concepts to describe it and create it. But it is subtle to be experienced by the wise. He also described it as unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned, which allows escape from that which is born, become, made, and conditioned. So when there's no cause for suffering, it does not arise. And the awakened ones are completely free from suffering. Well, actually, psychological suffering. They still have a body, and they, still experience pain, but it's not personalised. It's taken as the Dharma. It's a Dharma. It's a natural process of things arising and passing. So it's like this realisation, and it puts everything into perspective. Puts everything into perspective so that one sees Dhamma, one knows it, and we are free. So on that note, we come to the conclusion of our talks over this 4-part series on the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing and the co-joining of insight and serenity, and in relationships to the teachings of the Buddha. If I've misquoted anyone or misconveyed the teachings in any way, or harmed anyone through what I have said, I ask for forgiveness. Thank you.